Hello, welcome back. I'm Daiquiri, and today I wanted to answer a question for you and for myself. The question being, am I a radical feminist? I have hedged on this a bit because I've never really felt like I had a super clear understanding of what I'm committing to if I say yes. I followed a lot of self-described radical feminists on social media and agreed with a lot of, but not all of, their opinions. I definitely have radical feminist friends and connections, but never fully felt like I knew what the prerequisites were. So I decided to do a little digging to answer this question for myself, and I thought this is a new YouTube channel where I'm going to be exploring feminist and political ideas, as well as just whatever else tickles my fancy, if you will. So I did some investigating. A lot of it, I'll admit, was on Wikipedia, but despite what some of our teachers may have told us, Wikipedia can be a great source when it's properly cited, and I like to double check that and also use those citations to try to expand on it. And it gave me a lot about radical feminism. So let's get into it. A radical feminist, according to Wikipedia, is for the radical reorganization of society to eliminate male supremacy in all social and economic contexts. I definitely check that box. I firmly agree with that. I think for the betterment of humanity, that's the only way forward. Society itself, our economy, I say our, let me clarify. I am Canadian, so very westernized, heavily impacted by American culture and economics, living in intense capitalism. I would say that from what I understand of the experience the world over, there isn't anyone who escapes the effects of capitalism or patriarchy, and I personally think that the two are quite linked and that patriarchy begets capitalism. Radical feminists also believe that women are affected by race, class, and sexual orientation. Definitely agree with that. Those other axes of oppression interact with misogyny in their own unique ways and can compound with each other and misogyny to create new forms of oppression. For example, the term misogynoir, which is used to specifically address the misogyny that is experienced by Black women, or lesbophobia, which is the intersection of homophobia and misogyny. All people, men and women and children, who are not white, who are poor, who are same-sex attracted, they experience oppression on these axes, and then that is compounded with the misogyny experienced by all women, and they really can't be separated from each other. I personally don't think that you can silo identities in such a way. Radical feminists also believe that society is a patriarchy where men oppress women. Yeah, that's a big yes from me on that one. I would say that one's an observable fact, but I guess if we are going to classify it as an opinion, then it is one that I agree with. Checking that off. Radical feminists oppose the sexual objectification of women. Definitely. I definitely oppose that, and I would take it further to say that I oppose the non-sexual objectification of women as well. I think that women are objectified and otherwise oppressed because of their sex, but it isn't always sexual. Radical feminists challenge gender roles. This is important. I think that this gets overlooked by those critical of radical feminism or third wave feminism, who think of it as being regressive or trying to defend gender roles because they're really fixated on the gender topic. And I definitely agree with the challenging of gender roles, and that gender roles are one of many tools used to oppress women, not doing women any favors, and I would be happy to eradicate those entirely. Radical feminists believe the root cause of women's oppression is patriarchal gender relations, as opposed to the root cause of women's oppression being legal systems, which is the belief of liberal feminists, or class conflict, as is the belief of Marxist feminists. This one I had to give some thought to because I think that women are certainly oppressed by all of those systems, being patriarchal gender relations, legal systems, and class conflict. But ultimately, I do agree that the root cause is the patriarchy and patriarchal gender relations, because the legal systems that are oppressive to women didn't just come to existence fully formed. They were created by men who were oppressing women before the systems were in place. And class conflict is definitely a source of women's oppression, but the fact that poor women experience oppression more severely than and different from poor men tells me that it is not just about their class. So yes, definitely agree with that. That in our current society, radical feminists believe women are the other to the male norm. This one, again, I think it's observable fact. I've been reading the book Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. I highly recommend it and am hoping to do a video on it soon, but I'm not actually done it yet, where she lays out with hundreds of useful studies and citations the evidence that the world was designed and is maintained considering the male body, the male life experience, as the norm for humanity, and very deliberately excludes women from everything from medications, health, city planning, construction of basically anything you can think of, tools, clothes, protective equipment, cars, anything. That there are differences between the experiences of men and women with all of these things, and that the male experience is being centered, catered to, planned for at the cost of the female experience. So yes, definitely, women are othered. Radical feminists believe men keep women suppressed to exploit them. Definitely true. I think that every single man on earth benefits from the patriarchy, and even if a man is non-violent, he benefits from the violence exhibited by males. Even if a man is not personally exploiting women, he benefits from the way that his fellow men exploit women, because it is the implicit threat that suppresses women, and it's his comparatively good behavior compared to a violent or abusive or exploitative man that keeps him in good social graces. So yes, definitely men keep women suppressed to exploit them. Absolutely. Radical feminists believe the production of porn harms women. Abso-fucking-lutely. Yes, that one's a huge yes from me. Porn perpetuates sexual violence. It perpetuates sexual abuse. It perpetuates rape. It perpetuates human trafficking. It perpetuates pedophilia. It exploits and very materially harms the women who participate, and it also harms every woman by the expectation that men have that women are sexually available to them and exist to sexually gratify them. One example that we reference in the lesbian collective when we're discussing how porn harms lesbians specifically is a lesbian couple in London who were attacked by teenage boys when they refused to kiss for them on public transit. Lesbian has been the top search category for porn worldwide for years, and men see lesbians as sexually available to them because of lesbian porn created to sexually cater to them. Porn definitely harms women and uniquely harms lesbians. Radical feminists believe that coercion and poverty lead women to porn and prostitution. This is definitely true. This is an example of an intersection with class politics and race politics, that more vulnerable women, like poor women, women of color, immigrants, are uniquely vulnerable to this particular misogynistic form of exploitation that exists purely to gratify men, dominate, and objectify women. Which actually leads us to and kind of explains the next point, which is that radical feminists believe that there is a race and classed nature of prostitution. Definitely true. Again, a observable reality that women of color and poor women are disproportionately affected by prostitution and porn. Radical feminists believe that prostitution is rape and abuse. If it's not obvious from the way I've been talking about it, I certainly agree with this. Even women who choose prostitution are doing so because of the misogyny that has taken other choices from them or led them to a place where their objectification and their degradation is even an option to be their survival tool, is in itself misogyny. So this is where it got kind of interesting for me, because I agreed with all of those things 100% readily, no question. I got to a section in the Wikipedia called Radical Lesbians. So I was like, oh, hell yeah, radical feminist lesbians. This is going to be my sweet spot. Turns out that actually wasn't the case. It was more a tangent about political lesbianism and a group of women who claimed that lesbian is not just defined by sexual orientation, but by lesbians' liberation and independence from men, which I just can't agree with. I think that my politics are definitely affected by my sexual orientation, and obviously lesbianism is very politicized, but it is in itself a form of homophobia to say that all lesbians are a specific political group. What unites us is our sexuality, and that's it. One point that I did agree with in the radical lesbian section is that women's liberation will not be successful without challenging heteronormativity. I think that that's certainly true, because the normalization of the typical heterosexual couple is one way that girls are subjugated, and lesbians need to know that lesbianism is an option. Bi women need to know that bisexuality is an option. Women need to know that centering women exclusively is an option. And that brings us to something that is always the first thing connected with the idea of radical feminism nowadays, and in my experience is the biggest conversation within radical feminist spaces nowadays, the trans issue. It turns out that there isn't a radical feminist consensus on this. Some really big name, iconic writers and thinkers of radical feminism, like Catherine McKinnon, are trans inclusive and consider trans women to be women and to be included in the feminism that they worked for. And then some other big name radical feminists like Mary Daly and Sheila Jeffreys were staunchly against the transgender movement and said, no, women are adult human females, and when I speak for women, that's what I mean. For myself, I don't believe in the existence of gender. I think that we as people are human animals. We are our bodies. There isn't anything about us that exists before or after our body's life. There isn't anything about us that exists separate from our bodies. So to claim that you are in the wrong body or that you need to change your body to match who you are implies that you and your body are two different things. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. So that kind of puts me more on the Sheila Jeffreys, Mary Daly side. I would not consider myself to be trans exclusive though, because even though I disagree with some of their mindsets, any female who identifies as any gender still is impacted by the misogyny that I am working against and is included in my activism. So I guess that would make me more male exclusive. But if pressed about this specifically, no, I don't consider self-identified trans women to be women, especially not in the same way that adult human females are. So, sounds like, according to Wikipedia at least, I definitely am a radical feminist. I check all the boxes, as you can see. I don't spend much time with self-identified radical feminists. In my experience, lesbian feminists tend to distance themselves from the concept of radical feminism right now because of its history in political lesbianism and the homophobic legacy that gives it. And I really respect lesbians who just want to prioritize lesbians. I would say that I'm kind of straddling the fence there. Like, I will always prioritize lesbians, being a lesbian, and centering that in my activism. But reading a bit about its history and where some of that political lesbian legacy comes from informed me in ways that I hadn't been before. I hadn't really realized the history there, and I think I can pretty readily say, like, hell yeah, I'm a radical feminist. One of the reasons that I have hesitated to call myself a radical feminist in the past also is because I haven't read a lot of radical feminist books. I haven't read a lot of theory. I would definitely like to, but it can be hard for me to know where to start. I've gotten some good resources and recommendations, and am happy to receive more. So if you have any thoughts on this subject, I would love to hear them. If there's anything that you think I left out that would be a qualifier to consider yourself a radical feminist, please let me know. I'd also be interested in hearing whether or not you consider yourself a radical feminist and why you do identify with it, why you distance yourself from it, your experience with the concept and practice of radical feminism. And that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. Bye.